regions 4A, 3. Now, I think even Region 1 and Region 2 are also registering spikes in cases. And that is why I call upon our regional directors of the Department of Health, the DILG, the local government units in these areas to ramp up more aggressively their vaccination of their citizens. Because at the end of the day, it's really going to be vaccination pa rin, proven against severe and critical cases and preventing hospitalization.
You just heard Health Secretary Francisco Duque III calling on local governments outside NCR to step up efforts as cases start to rise in the provinces. Some LGUs have already put in place policies to limit the movement of the unvaccinated. But that only resulted in a frightful rush to get that COVID shot.
Over in Metro Manila, the World Health Organization says the current alert level 3 would do in managing COVID infection. Philippine Representative Rabindra Abeyasinghe says the healthcare system can still absorb the infections until the end of the month, especially now that mobility has decreased.
We are seeing a significant reduction in mobility. And if yesterday's reduction in numbers is an indication, maybe the current alert levels are adequate. Projects that we can manage the health system till about the 27th, 28th of January, given the trends up to yesterday. With yesterday's decline, we may be even to manage beyond that. So we are very careful in saying we need to restrict movements more.
We focus first on the provinces tonight as the Health Department notes an uptick in COVID infections outside of the NCR.
Some LGUs have put in place new policies limiting movement for the unjabbed. While that boosted vaccination pace, it also resulted in some unnecessary frantic rush in Olongapo City. And Jenny Dongon has the big story.
It was like a scene straight out of an apocalypse movie. Hundreds screaming, rushing to the fence with outstretched arms, all to get that COVID job. This was the scenario at the Columban College in Olongapo City on Monday as throngs of residents flocked to the vaccination center.
Resulta ng announcement ng national na no vaccination, no labas. Tapos naghigpit din ng Subic Bay Freeport. Siguro naghigpit din yung mga companies doon na nirequire din yung mga workers na kinakailangan magpabakuna. Nag-ipon sila doon sa Columban College.
Come Wednesday, the lines, while still long, have become more organized. Many are still on their first dose. One of them is 72-year-old Lola Tresita, who admits that it's against her will to get jobbed.
Hindi dapat maging mandatory sana ito. But then, dahil hindi nga tayo pwede mag-travel without this card, vaccination card, we are forced to do so.
Another hopeful, Mang Albert, has been here since 3 in the morning. It is now 11 a.m. but is still filling out this information form.
Talagang mapipilitan ka. Dahil mo pa yung dagang nasa lungga, di ka makalabas.
Out of the 175,000 target vaccinees of the city, 83% are now fully vaccinated, while 96% are on their first job. The city government has announced a no vaccine, no entry policy to non-residents. Non-residents have to present proof of vaccination. Otherwise, they have to show a negative RT PCR or antigen test result.
Mayroon tayong konting konsiderasyon, lalo na yung pupunta ng mga medical travel.
Like Olongapo, Infanta Quezon also limits the movement of unvaccinated residents, as well as the entry of unvaccinated non-residents, with fines amounting to as much as 50,000 pesos. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, PR1 News.
We've always heard of the numbers in Metro Manila, but how about the provinces? And to find out more about their situation, joining us to answer the big questions is Marinduque Governor Presbiterio Velasco, also the National President of the League of Provinces. Governor Velasco, welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Ed and Gretchen.
Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. Sir, well, we've been hearing so much about Metro Manila and the NCR, but what about the provinces? Ano po yung mga probinsya na sa pagkakalam niyo medyo problemado na at parang nakakatakot na yung pag-akyat ng infections?
Well, that's being observed in several provinces already, and there is much apprehension on the part of the LGUs that there will be a surge in their respective areas. So, the holidays brought a lot of people from places which are now under alert level 3. And possibly these are the people who brought in the Omicron variant virus. No? So, medyo nagpiprepare na kami dito sa pagtaas. Nakikita na natin yung pagtaas sa mga iba't ibang manlalawigan ngayon.
Actually, Governor, I was also wondering about that kasi mukhang yung center ng surge ng Omicron now is Metro Manila. Talagang that's the NCR is driving the infections. What about the provinces? Are the governors worried about the spread from Metro Manila to the provinces? And for example, do they plan to make any proposals to regulate yung pagpasok ng mga taga Metro Manila sa mga probinsya nila?
Definitely, Ed, we are much worried, and talagang there is much apprehension that magkakaroon ng mga surge in the different provinces. As a matter of fact, dumadami na yung mga provinces na nakikitaan itong pagtaas. So, kaya we are now imposing reasonable regulations on border control. Kung medyo naging lenient siguro because of the holidays, this time, I hope the people from alert level 3 will understand, that we will be imposing stricter measures with respect to their entry to our respective provinces. Like we may be requiring them again to present certificate that they are negative of RT PCR test or antigen test, and that they may be subjected to medical examination upon entry, and that the barangay officials will also closely monitor their movement, and that they should comply with the regulations on curfew and some restrictions on their mobility.
Sir, about your last point, itong requiring RT PCR tests or antigen tests, you're referring to visitors from the NCR, and is this something that is seriously being considered by the League of Provinces or Governors, and is it something that there's a consensus on?
Well, iba-iba naman yung mga situations in different provinces, it's up to the LGU concerned to impose the restrictions that they may feel reasonable with respect to their particular locality, because under the IATF rules and even under the Bayanihan Law 2, the LGUs have the power to impose reasonable regulations with respect to this pandemic. And even under the local government code, we have these powers under the General Welfare Clause. And also we have police power, to ensure that our residents are protected. So this will be happening, and the LGUs are being urged to already pass ordinances that may further restrict the movements of people coming from.
Okay, I think we lost Governor. We lost Governor Velasco. That was Governor Presbytero Velasco of Marinduque, also the National President of the League of Provinces. Salamat po, Governor. And here are the other COVID-19 stories from around the world. The United States records 1.35 million new COVID-19 cases, the highest single-day tally for any country. A large number of the cases were backlogs due to the many states that were not reporting over the weekend. Now, despite this, the 7-day average for new cases in the U.S. has tripled in 2 weeks to over 700,000 a day. A World Health Organization official, meanwhile, warns more than half of Europe is projected to catch Omicron by March. Europe Director Hans Klug is calling for immediate action to avoid a west to east tidal wave of Omicron infections.
These are the other big stories tonight. It's day one of the no vax, no ride policy of the Department of Transportation. How exactly did that go? While investigations on the alleged hack of Comelec servers are on the way, a commissioner dismissed Manila Bulletin's report as fake news. The Premier Volleyball League is just around the corner and teams have begun reshuffling their lineups. More of these big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Edlin Gao.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Checkpoints are back as the no vax, no ride policy takes effect today.
Some passengers also got a free ride at the MRT-3 after turning up negative in the random antigen testing. Jada de la Peña with the story.
Metro Manila commute is about to get harder. The Transportation Department has now put in place a no vaccine, no ride policy in NCR. This means that only those who have received their full primary doses of COVID jabs are allowed to take public transportation.
Ang aim po ng DO nato, ng Department Order na ito, ay maproteksyon po ang ating pampublikong transportasyon na huwag maging vector po ng pagtransmission ng ating ng Omicron variant.
Some transport terminals have already started to adopt the policy.
Paano po yung AstraZeneca yung nakuha nilang vaccine? 3 months po yung hintay nila bago pa sila makaluwas.
Galing kami sa hospital, chemo patient yung mother ko tapos hindi nila pasasakay.
But the DOTr says those who have medical conditions and those availing essential goods or services, including vaccination schedules, are exempted. Airlines and rail operators are still waiting on the guidelines before implementing the new rule. While the mandate will be hard to monitor for jeepneys, the DOTr says they have found a way.
Humingi na rin po kami ng tulong sa PNP para ma-enforce to. Pero mga areas po na magkakaroon po tayo ng pag-check po kung may mga vaccination card po yung mga taong nakasakay sa pampublikong sasakyan.
Bayan said the policy is punitive, especially when the government is allegedly to blame for vaccine shortfalls. But according to the DOTr,
pwede naman po silang bumiyahe sa kanilang sarili pong hindi lang nga po sa pampublikong sasakyan. Ang individual na karapatan ng tao ay subjected po or subservient sa general will.
Meanwhile, the MRT-3 already started its random antigen testing among passengers. Done during peak hours, passengers from North Avenue, Cubao, Shaw Boulevard, and Taft Avenue stations were tested. As of Tuesday, the line has tested almost 100 individuals, 15 of which have tested positive. Those who test negative were given a free ride. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, We Are One News.
How difficult or costly is it to get an RT PCR test these days? Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro himself had to go through the tedious process, and he shows us his experience in this report.
I already have flu and COVID-like symptoms. I tested positive for COVID-19 in an antigen test kit, and I've already put myself under self-quarantine. And if you're going through the very same thing, what's the next step for you? Ideally, the next step is an RT PCR test, the gold standard for COVID-19 testing.
Kasi dapat mapagawa mo doon within the first 3 days. Okay. Beyond that, lumalabo yung na mahuli natin yung virus.
But now you come across a whole set of new problems. First, scheduling a PCR test often takes time and a lot of money. An antigen test can cost you a little less than 1,000 pesos, but an RT PCR test will set you back at least 3 to 5. Also, results take time, since the sample have to be tested in a laboratory. And perhaps more importantly now, positivity rates, or the percentage of those tested turning up positive. On Tuesday, January 11, it was at 44.5%. In simpler terms, what this also means is that at least half of the people you meet in testing centers are already infected. That is why the health department advises people who have COVID-like symptoms to just assume they have COVID and go into self-isolation instead of venturing out to get a PCR test. As for me, the office was able to arrange a home visit for a PCR test. A day later, the RT PCR test finally came in. I really am positive for COVID-19. But at this point, I was already ready. As soon as I started getting symptoms, I sent my sister off to the province so I could go into isolation, and my LGU and community had already been informed of my case. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, with the much-anticipated return of the Premier Volleyball League next month, teams have been beefing up their rosters in preparation for another action-filled conference. A look into some of the roster moves in my report. Volleyball fever is starting to heat up as players and teams make the move for the upcoming PVL Open Conference. Perhaps one of the biggest surprises, a former Lady Eagle joining an animal-laden squad. Z Hervasio makes her return to indoor volleyball as an F2 logistics cargo mover.
It's interesting because, syempre, di ba, tayo from Ateneo, it would always be, it's Ateneo Lasal, ganyan-ganyan. But now it's an opportunity to see it face to face and experience the whole thing.
Medyo surreal, no? Kasi naalala ko parang, hindi ba dati nagta-trash talk ka din sa Lasal?
Parang naman yung nauna.
Now joining Z in the switch is Shola Alvarez. Aside from learning Coach Ramil de Jesus' system, Z is also excited to play alongside one particular player.
I actually wanna be inside the court with si Chang Abi. I wanna feel her energy.
Longtime Perla spiker Nicole Chamzon, meanwhile, signed up with Petrogas after her club team and Santa Lucia decided to sit out the next conference. But while some teams took a break, the Signal HD Lady Spikers have been busy beefing up their squad. They signed up Maristela Layog, Ces Molina, Glodine Troncoso, Jerry Malabanan, and PVL 2021 Best Blocker Riri Meneses. For Jerry Lee, this marks her reunion with former FU teammates and coach, Shaq De Los Santos.
You know the term tough love? Parang ganun si Coach Shaq. He's tough on you, but he really wants all of his players to improve.
Now for Riri, it's all about carrying on her momentum to her new team.
Siguro yung nakaka-excite yung dadating na liga na to kasi halos karamihan din ng team nagre-reshuffle din eh. Excited din ako na makabalik na kami sa training kasi ayoko yung performance ko tapos na biglang bababa ulit.
While expectations are at an all-time high for Signal, Riri and Jerry are more than ready to take on the challenge.
I think everybody po wants to be a champion. So, ayun po, mag-champion. Or also just to improve kung ano yung result ng team ng Signal last conference.
The PVL Open Conference is tentatively slated to open next month. Gretchen Ho, we are One News. Time for another quick break. When we return, government has decided to put a cap on the amount of paracetamol that could be purchased as the flu medicine continues to be in high demand. The National Privacy Commission has started its own investigation into the alleged hacking of Comelec servers. But a Comelec official is already dismissing the story as fake news. And a baby's milestone in kakanin fashion. Netizens rave about a baby photo shoot featuring our favorite Pinoy rice cakes. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Ed Mingao.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. A purchasing cap has been placed on flu medicine to prevent customers from hoarding supplies.
This as drug companies replenish stocks of paracetamol and other analgesics. JC Cosico has a story.
Alexis Candelaria bought 10 pieces of paracetamol in this drugstore in Quiapo today. Thankfully, there were stocks. Before, it took him days to buy one.
In case na may kasakit sila, may gamot na po kami.
The government has imposed a purchase limit on flu medicines like paracetamol. Under Joint Memorandum Circular 22-01 of the Health and Trade Departments, an individual can only buy up to 20 tablets of paracetamol or 60 tablets per household. Paracetamol syrups or suspension, meanwhile, can be bought at a maximum of 5 bottles per individual and 10 per household. The same cap applies for cough medicine, carbamazepine, and other related drugs. Online selling of flu drugs is also prohibited unless permitted by the Food and Drug Administration. With this, the TTI assures that there's no shortage in supply of the mentioned medicines. The limit is just in place to avoid hoarding.
Kailangan i-limit natin siya para siguradong lahat ng bibili sa isang particular drugstore ay makakabili.
Violators can be imprisoned for up to 10 years with corresponding fines as well for stores selling excessively to one customer. DTI also said inspectors are roaming every day to monitor the situation on the ground. This was a welcome development to some consumers.
Kasi yung iba kasi nag-hoard lang naman sila pero wala silang sakit.
Para yung iba makabili din at magamit nila yung mga kailangan nilang magamit.
However, some drugstores in Bambang, Manila still don't have stocks of paracetamol.
Anong nakakaraan po? Marami pong bibili.
But the DTI said manufacturers might not have delivered yet due to the sudden increase in demand this past few weeks. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
And here are the election-related stories we are keeping our eyes on. In an exclusive interview with One News Agenda, presidential aspirant VP Leni Robredo says she will see to it that her cabinet members will be a balanced mix of women and men experts if she wins the presidency. Should she become president, VP Leni says the cabinet will all be respected experts in their field and good managers. Robredo says she wants to work with people who believe in empowerment and inclusivity and welcomes people who have different perspectives.
Hindi ko sinasabi na mas marami akong babaeng kukunin. Kasi syempre, ang number one pa din, gaya na sabi ko kanina, yung experts in their field, yung respeto ng stakeholder sa kanya. Pero sa akin, magiging very mindful ako ng balance.
Comelec junks the petition to reopen the filing of certificate of candidacy by the Cusi-led faction of PDP Laban. Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez says the Commission on Elections Unbank unanimously denied the petition. Comelec Unbank also resoundingly denied calls to suspend elections until 2025. Meanwhile, Commissioner Rowena Guanzon dismissed Manila Bulletin's reports of an alleged hacking of Comelec servers as fake news. In a tweet, Commissioner Guanzon urges Manila Bulletin's editors to verify their report. The National Privacy Commission started its own investigation and has ordered both Comelec and Manila Bulletin to appear in a clarificatory meeting.
Mothers usually dress up their babies as princesses for pictorials, but not this mom.
Netizens gushed over a baby's adorable Filipino-snack themed monthly photos. Baby Jada, who was born on June 2021, went viral for a set of snaps. In her first month, she was dressed up as a palitaw and a suman in her second.
Now, her most recent photo shoot was Baby Jada as the Filipino favorite Biko. According to Jada's parents, Filipino snacks are their all-time favorite. The photos were praised by netizens, calling it cute and creative.
Puto bumbong, cute naman. May naisip na ako para...
Nakita mo
nandito
isa?
ako sa... Ano?
Nakita mo yung isa? Babingka.
Alin? Oo. Parang sarap kainin, ano?
Hindi yata nakuha ni Gretchen.
Hindi ko nakuha.
Babingka. Babingka.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. Tito joke.
Pasensya na, meron tayong virtual lag eh. Hindi, pero may idea na ako kasi Ed, medyo matagal-tagal na rin ako dito sa isolation. Mamaya ako nang mag-post ng mga ganyang photo. Abangan na lang po. We have to find ways to find things to do in isolation so everybody keep sane, stay alive, and keep healthy.
Sige, abangan namin lahat yan. Sige.
That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again toward 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. For Robbie Lampay, I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.